Okay. Well, thank you all for joining me for part two of fruits and vegetables from other cultures. So this is part two simply because there were too many in the presentation for me to get through last week. So we're going to go ahead and make this a two-parter. And I've already had some interest from some garden groups to come and give this talk because there was a lot of interest in, oh, gee, look at all these different types of fruits and vegetables that we can grow here and or that are available in some of the international markets around Gwinnett. So this one seems to be seems to have a good bit of interest. Probably a light crowd because I had to throw this up here last minute, but that's okay. These are recorded, so they'll go up over on the Metro Master Gardener YouTube channel. And if you are interested in anything that you see here, you can always go check that out and see what it was that you were looking at and you're like, oh yeah, now I remember. And next time you go out, you can go take a look and see if you can find that particular fruit or vegetable, or you might decide that you want to try growing it in your garden here. A lot of what we see here in this particular presentation will grow in zones 7B and 8A. So you can get seeds online. You can order about anything online. And you can get recipes online, of course, and you can try some of these here. So that always is kind of interesting to us as gardeners that we can try things from around the world, stuff that maybe, over in another country, that's a staple, but here we just don't know that much about. So you never know what you're missing, in other words. All right, let's dive in. And if you have a question about a particular fruit or vegetable, please feel free to drop that in the chat box and I will answer questions. And then, of course, if there's time left, I will answer questions about anything else that you might have that's biological related. All right, passion fruit. So passion fruit, and you can see here, I've got a map. You'll find that if you were on the last webinar, the map that I show here, blue, is the origin of that particular fruit. And then the red is an area where it's currently grown. And there may be other places that it's currently grown, but these are the known ones or most popular places that these particular fruits are grown. So passion fruit is known by different names depending on where you are. So it could be in Spanish, grenadille, or it could be fruit de la passion in French, or maracuja in Portuguese, or lilikoi in Hawaiian, or just passion fruit here in good old US. So grown in South America, it was originally in Brazil and some of the other South American countries, Caribbean, Southern United States, Australia. It's pretty much all over Southeast Asia, parts of Africa and into South America, and even in the Southern US. You'll probably, if you're a regular gardener around here, know what that flower looks like. So that would be our native maypop, and that's grown in zones 7B. That's a host plant for quite a few different types of butterflies. Most likely, the one a lot of us are most familiar with is going to be the Gulf fritillary. But yeah, that's the passion flower vine or the maypop, and they'll make these little round fruits that supposedly are edible. The ornamental or the North American variety that we have here isn't really edible, but there are some that are much more edible and more tasty. And it can be put into all sorts of things. You will find passion fruit drinks. You will find passion fruit jams, lots of pastries. And for instance, I was in Hawaii a couple of years ago, a couple of summers ago, and Hawaii is a melting pot, even more so than Gwinnett County in some respects. And they have cuisine from all over. So not only do you have, like Southeast Asian, you also have, um, some Chinese, some Japanese, you might have a little bit of African in there. And it's just, and even Hispanic, it's interesting to see what you have there. My favorite was the malasadas, and you would have these little donut shacks that would pop up on the side of the road. You'd just be driving along, and there's a little, food truck, and they're selling malasadas, and they are fruit filled. Basically, it's just a jelly donut. But the one that was the best was the Lilikoi malasada, and it was so good. Oh my gosh, freshly made, um, just so tasty. And so I probably gained like 10 or 15 pounds coming back from there because we ate a lot of the really good stuff, but very tasty. So you won't typically find that as a fruit filling here for your donuts, but know that it is very tasty. So if you ever go over there, check it out and make sure that you get some of those because they are very yummy. And you can get the passion fruit jam. You'll tend to find most of these in some of the more international sections because it's just not a mainstream fruit that we see here, in the South or in the mainland. But it is very tasty. It has a kind of an individual, unique flavor, but again, very tasty. So this isn't really going to grow in this particular tropical fruit, the edible kind. It's not really going to grow here in zone 8A. It's really a 9 through 12, so it is a tropical. But the hardy version that we do have here, the pretty flower that you can get, we do have that. So, check that out and check out some of the products that you can get here if that tickles your fancy. All right. Jicama. So this is kind of a starchy root. There's all sorts of different things you can make from it. Sometimes people want to you can make noodles out of it. You can take and make sticks. You see there the tahine, that's sold all over the place. It's kind of a flavor enhancer. They had it in Hawaii, but you sprinkle it on. You can sprinkle it on pineapple. You can sprinkle it on this stuff. You sprinkle it on just about anything. And I think that's what their advertising is. Sprinkle it on anything. But jicama is native to Mexico and Central America. You can see mostly in Mexico and Central America. And the Mayans and the Aztecs began the cultivation. Of course, that has expanded. So now it's in South America. And then you also have in Southeast Asia. So it is zones best built for hardiness zones 9 through 12. So more tropical, South Georgia probably, and down into Florida and the Caribbean and again Mexico and South America, and more of the tropical Southeast Asia countries. But it's very crunchy, very tasty. I've tried it before when I was in the Caribbean. It's kind of something like a carrot, you just kind of sit there and, chew on it. It's a good snack. You can cut it in slices or strips. You can cook it. Sometimes people will fry it up. You can make it into noodles like you see here. Sometimes you're even going to grind it into flour. So it's an alternative that you can use, kind of a starchiness. So maybe if you have gluten issues, this would be a good alternative. You do have to be careful. The skin, the stem, seeds, all of that kind of stuff, and even leaves are kind of toxic. They've got rotenone. So just as an aside, rotenone, if you've listened to any of my organic pesticide talks, rotenone is actually a pesticide. It's a pesticide and also a pesticide. And if you use eardrops in your pets, if they have ear mites, that sometimes can be rotenone. So it can temporarily stun fish. It can also kill fish. I used to use that when I was a fisheries biologist. It is not widely available anymore as a pesticide. So, but you can still get it on an experimental basis. So this one is one that you might not be able to grow here, but you can certainly pick it up at some of the international markets. And depending on where you are in the area, it's something that you might be able to find for sale. Sometimes in Kroger, Walmart, they'll carry interesting vegetables and fruits from around the world. So it's worth trying. It's similar to like a turnip or something like that. The Nance. So this again is a tropical fruit, not something that you're going to be able to really grow here. This is kind of native to more dry tropical and semi-tropical areas. So central Mexico, like the Yucatan, northern South America, things like that. Places where it's a little bit drier, not tropical rainforest, but still hot nonetheless. And you're going to get these tiny little fruits like, I don't know, probably a big fat cherry. And they're going to grow on clusters, kind of like you see there in those pictures. And the longer you leave them on there, the sweeter they get. So you can actually purchase these as canned. So if you look down there, you see a jar of those Nance fruits, and you can also get them frozen. You can get them freeze dried, and you can also apparently get a wine. I've never seen that personally, but I would probably try it. It sounds like it's pretty tasty. Um, it says it has a pungent scent similar to Kalamata olives. Um, I, maybe I would definitely try it, but I don't know if I would want to drink a whole bottle of that. But I think, sweetened, probably you can use it in jams and juices and ices and carbonated beverages. It's probably mixed with some syrups and could be very light and refreshing. So not overbearing, which, hey, I'm always a fan of that. I like refreshing. And I think it's called Marichi in Brazil. So that's the other alternate name. So if you happen to be out and about and you see these little orangey fruits and they're called Nance fruits, or you see a bottle of wine, try it. You never know, you might like it. Nopales, prickly pear, or cactus pads. I personally like them. So we went to Mexico last summer and we stayed in a native, probably an eco resort, I guess, that would be probably something that the locals would stay at. They had more locals there, some French Canadians, and then just some regular Canadians, and not very many Americans. But I like that kind of thing. I'd rather kind of integrate into the culture a little bit and learn about it. And so they had a lot of traditional Mexican fruits and vegetables and things like that. And they had cactus, and it was good. Let me tell you, when it was up there, I was eating it. So was my daughter. It was really tasty, very refreshing, a little bit of an astringent flavor to it, but really tasty nonetheless. I mean, if I could find it locally here, I probably would purchase it and eat it. This is a native of Mexico and Central America, of course, semi-arid region. So we were in the Yucatan, so that's where we checked it out and enjoyed it. And it's very drought tolerant. We do have a variety of prickly pear that will grow here. I actually have a little pot out there. My daughter found some out behind in our backyard and put it in a pot. It's been there for the last 15 years. I'm not going to eat that one. But if you do happen to see some at your local grocery store or international grocery, it's worth checking out. I mean, it's you're probably going to see just a large one single pad, and then you have to peel it and then chop it. You put it in salads, grill it, cook it, put it in stews, that kind of thing. So hardiness zones 8 through 12. So technically, it will grow here. And like I said, there is a native version that's here. I don't know personally anybody that eats that, but we can do a little bit more research and figure out if that is edible. But you can see you can get it canned down there in brine. You can get cactus juice and you can drink that. And then of course, you can buy the fruits and then the pads themselves. Huaya or guaya. So these are grown in tropical Mexico, South America, Central South America, and they have a lot of different names. So this was an interesting one. Like there's some stuff here that in the research of doing this, I scratched my head. And, again, a shout out to my mom and also Master Gardener Shirley Bohm. She put a lot of hard work into doing some research for me, and then I typically flesh them out and make them look pretty. I might add a few extras. But who knows where she found these? I mean, these are all very interesting, and I really enjoyed working on this the many hours that I did because I didn't know some of this stuff existed. You have to sometimes go there to see it and to try it, and some of it might be just a hidden gem that you never would know about unless you saw a presentation like this. But this is also known as a Spanish lime, a limoncello, or a mamoncillo, or mamons. So lots of different names. I did, a lot of digging in there to see if I could figure out what it was used for. And it's got that hard outer shell. As it's ripe or as it's ripening, you can use it to make preserves or jams, and then it can be fermented and made into an alcohol. It may also have some medicinal uses. I couldn't find a whole lot of information about that. But you can see up there that there's some drinks. So that's the fermented juice that's made into it's made into that. I have to think, since it's got the name limoncillo, that it probably tastes maybe a little bit like that Italian drink, maybe very astringent and refreshing. So I did not see where you could purchase that. I imagine you probably have to know somebody, but if you could get a recipe, it might be worthwhile trying it out if you can get some of the fruit. Okay, cow peas or Crowder peas. A lot of folks here, if you've lived in the South, may recognize these. So this is an annual plant. It's grown in gardens, even around here, hardiness zones 5 through 11. It can grow as a bush or climbing vine, and it's native to West Africa. So some of the plants that we do have growing here are plants that were brought over by immigrants at one time or another. And so this one, grown in Africa, India, Southeast Asia, West Indies, Caribbean, Central, and North America, and the Mediterranean. Also known as the black-eyed pea or the southern pea. We would probably know it as the black-eyed pea. And, of course, there's a lot of Southerners have the tradition of, on New Year's Day, you eat your black-eyed peas and your collard greens because that gives you good luck for the whole year. But really, if you dig back, you can see that these were actually brought over when the slaves were brought over from Africa. They brought this with them. And so it's kind of integrated into Southern culture and continues to be grown in gardens. And they're tasty. I mean, I particularly like them. I don't grow them in my garden, but they're a really good addition mixed in with green beans. They're kind of starchy and a little bit different than some of the other types of peas that are out there, or beans. Tasty. I would say you can get the seed around here. It's worthwhile trying. And when we do the Gwinnett County Fair and we have the crop intake, I do know that a lot of people will dry these and they will put them in jars, and then those jars are judged. So who knows if they went and bought them at the store and dumped them in a jar and then got their $10 for first place. But, I'm not judging. I'm not judging that. I'm just judging how pretty they look in the jar. So anyway, thrives in poor deserty areas. It's a nitrogen fixer in the legume family. So if you have a patch of yard and it's just hot and dry, won't grow anything, it might grow these. So it may be worthwhile checking it out. Oh, I was supposed to hit that earlier, the Happy New Year. I forgot that animation's in there. Sorry about that. Okay, African black nightshades, Solanaeum. So this is its origin is in Australia. So you can see down there, Australia is blue. It is also grown in Southeast Asia and India. It's grown in Africa and South America and on up into and around the Mediterranean countries in Europe. So you probably see, I would say, what is it? Not pigweed. We have one of these here. You'll notice them out in the gardens. I have them up at my place up in Rabun County. The bears get into them. Raccoons will eat them, and goodness, the name is escaping me right now. I apologize. It's in the same family as that. Deadly nightshade is also a weed that farmers hate, and this is in that family. So, but it's not as toxic as that. Birds will eat it, but for humans and mammals and stuff like that, we shouldn't be eating it. Anyway, growing in zone 6B to 11B, so that will grow here if we choose to. You can use the leaves and stems. You can blanch or boil those, put them in soups and stews, similar to, I don't know, spinach or something like that. Uh, the heritage or the older varieties are going to produce kind of really bitter berries, but you can see down there those two skeins of yarn that they can make a really pretty kind of a purpley blue color if you use them to dye. So if you're into the homesteading thing, it may be worthwhile getting some of the local varieties here and using those to actually produce a dye for your yarn if you want to do that. Some of them will produce berries that you can use for fruits and jams, pies, and things, and that you can see in those uh, two jars down there, and then the berries in front, that's what those are used for. That is not the variety that we have here in North America, so just know that there are multiple varieties of that. So you would need to get a different variety that looks a little bit different for that jam and jelly. So it's going to grow best in cool, high moisture environments, which is not here. It's not cool. It is very humid, but this is a higher altitude plant, this particular one. And so this is not something that we would necessarily grow here. But if you're traveling and this is you see some of these or you see some jam, perhaps you know somebody or somebody in your family, maybe you're down in South America and you want to try it. It's worthwhile. It's tasty. And if you're into homesteading, now you can use the berries from the variety we have here to dye your yarn. Stinging nettle. So this is one, and I grew up knowing that stinging nettle was not something you wanted to mess around with. Sometimes stinging nettle and jewelweed would be right next to each other. Jewelweed has pretty little orangey flowers on it. And if you were out running around out in, the back 40 and you happened to walk through the nettles, oh my gosh, you would not forget that. But I also learned that you can use that jewelweed to put a poultice on top of that stinging nettle to help take the sting away. But who knew you could actually use it for other things? I just thought it was a weed. It is a weed to me. I mean, I probably will take a pass on trying anything here. But this is native to Northern Europe and Asia, and it likely came with the European settlers when they came over here. Now grows Europe, North Africa, Asia, New Zealand, Australia, North America, Mexico, South America, Central America. It pretty much grows everywhere. Its origin is going to be up in Northern Asia, up into Russia and all of that, as you can see up there. So you supposedly can take young leaves and make them like you would spinach. So a pesto, a puree, soup, stews. You can see there I've got a nettle leaf tea, and it has been used medicinally for a really long time, thousands and thousands of years. And I know enough history, and I've followed Native American history and other European history. I know it's been used medicinally. And you can still buy it now, stinging nettle root extract. I mean, you can get that pretty much anywhere. That's kind of up to you if you want to try it. I'm kind of curious about the tea. You can probably get that on Amazon, but you can certainly get it online. Obviously, I plucked this off the internet, but just be very careful when you're handling it if you've got it growing out back. They inject kind of a histamine that's going to give you a little localized allergic reaction. So if you're going to handle them with gloves or have that jewel weed and maybe give it a go. So jute mallow or West African sorrel. So this is jute mallow originated in the Indian Burma region or Africa. So Burma, you can see there in blue, you've got some in the India on into Southeast Asia and then up in Northern Africa. It is a rather tall plant. You can see some pictures of it there. Grows very quick. It has a hardiness zone of 9 to 11. So really, it is probably just outside of where we are. I would think Macon area and south if you were going to try growing it. Supposedly, leaves and seeds and young fruits are edible. You can use the leaves for tea and kind of a soup thickener. So, maybe a different thing to try instead of cornstarch or flour. That bark, the bark or the tissue that you see there on that tall plant is used for jute or that twine, the rope. So that's kind of spun into a jute. So that's now you know where the origin of that is. And you can see a meal that's made up there with jute. So the leaves that you can see up there. So I'm not really sure where you would find this. This would probably, again, be something that if you wanted to try eating it, this is going to be where if you're traveling overseas and you have the opportunity to try it, this being just a particular type of plant that grows there, you may find it locally, probably not, but it's something definitely worth trying if you're traveling and you want to try something new. Now you know what it is. And jute is edible also. How many knew that? All right, black radish or winter radish. So the origin is in the Italy area, so Mediterranean, kind of arid, and also grown in Europe, Asia, Egypt, Greece, so Northern Africa, parts of India, Southeast Asia, up in and around most of Europe and also into the US. It's also known as black Spanish or Spanish black radish, oriental radish, winter radish. And its hardiness zone is zones 2 through 11. So it has a very wide range. You can grow that here in the US if you want to try that. It is a fairly bitter rooted vegetable, but kind of similar to horseradish, I guess. And I think the best ways to do it would be to kind of roast it or fry it. Koreans might use that in kimchi. You might use it in traditional medicines. It's just another kind of fibrous root vegetable that is not something you're probably used to that you might think about trying if you come across it. So if you're out and about and you see something that's labeled winter radish or black radish, pick one up. They're a little bit larger than your typical radishes that you get around here that you can get that are nice and red that you can buy at the store. They're closer in size to probably a beet, but they are semi-cold tolerant, so you could actually try growing them here. It takes about 35 to 55 days for maturity. So if you're going to plant a winter garden, why not think about planting some of these? And then you can try some of these interesting curry dishes like you see over there, or, a different, have a different sauteed or make them into chips like you see over here. And they also do have some dietary, digestive health, liver functions, that kind of thing. But again, I'm not, one for doing the testing. I'm just putting it up there. But it does have some medicinal value, so they say. Okay, Belgian endive. So this looks interesting, and you're like, oh, that looks like a little green. Did you know? And I don't think I have a little bouncy did you know on this one. But Belgian endive originated around the Mediterranean Sea and in Asia. So you can see there the whole Mediterranean in blue, Northern Africa, some of the more arid areas, France, Spain, Italy, and some of the Middle Eastern countries. So it's also known as Witloof chicory. So chicory sounds interesting, sounds familiar, right? And that's because it can be used as a coffee substitute. So you see there, you have Anthony's instant chicory root, which is a coffee substitute. Sometimes you'll find it now where it's mixed with coffee, and it's grown in zones 4 through 9. So note that grown in Northwestern Europe. So Belgium, France, Chile, India, South Africa, Australia. What's in the southern United States and Louisiana? You get a lot of chicory over there. So you have, if you go back in the Wayback Machine for history, you'll find you have a lot of French folks that are there. And that's how when they emigrated here, they brought the chicory root with them. So endive, you can use it and you can see it's braised or made into a dish there, but the root can also be made into chicory root coffee, and you can enjoy it there. So it will grow here if you want to try doing that. Maybe you've only grown it as kind of like a lettuce substitute, where you see there where it's kind of braised and um, marinated with something else. But now you know the history of Belgian endive and the chicory root. So this one got thrown in here because Kim told me about it this afternoon. She gets a lot of stuff from Georgia Organics, and as part of her school stuff, she gets packs of interesting things that might not be on people's radar. And she mentioned to me about Hamburg parsley. She said, "Do I have that in here?" And I did not. I had a lot of stuff, but I can't hit everything. And so I did not have hamburger parsley. So I did a little poking and, around in the internet to see if I could get some information. And Hamburg parsley looks just like parsley. So if you had it growing and you only saw the tops of it down in your garden, it would just be parsley to you or me. But if you pull it up, it's got this little root on it that looks a little bit like a white carrot. So it's also known as root parsley, and it originated in Germany. So this is a European vegetable. It's also grown in Eastern Europe, other than Germany. So Austria, Hungary, Poland, Holland, and into Russia. And it is grown in zones 5 through 9. So it is not something, it's not a tropical. It's something that's more temperate, hence Europe and some of the cooler countries. But it's an edible root, and it can be kept in the garden, in the ground all through winter, and then dug up as needed for stews and soups. So kept in the root cellar. I'm sure there are folks that, just like with carrots or potatoes, they keep them cool in the root cellar and then pull them out and use them as needed for cooking through the winter. It supposedly has a look, and it tastes a little bit between a parsnip and a carrot, but not quite like either of those two. It sounds very interesting. I could imagine making a roasted root vegetable medley where you had maybe some beets and some carrots and some of this Hamburg parsley root and maybe some potatoes, and then kind of douse them in olive oil, cut them up, douse them in olive oil, salt, and pepper, and just stick them in the oven and roast them up. That makes them kind of nice and sweet. That sounds really good. But it looks like Italian parsley from the top, and you can certainly use the top like parsley if you would do that. It has that flavor, but you can also use the root more so than any of the other types of parsley. And some of the dishes that I found when I was looking around on the internet is one that's very popular would be the soup that you see here. It is known for basically cooking it and then blending it up with the tops, and it makes a really hearty soup. And ignore it's a deciduous tree that is hardy and drought tolerant. I forgot to pull that out. I was looking at that going, that is not a tree. It's only a tree if you're an ant. So I forgot to pull that one out. I apologize. But you can get seeds. You can see here. You probably have to import them, but I did see them on Amazon. You can probably get them on Etsy. So that might be something worth looking into if you're wanting to try something different. Salsify, oyster plant. I've heard it called oyster plant. And this is something that originated in Southeastern Europe and North Africa, so around the Mediterranean area again. I don't have these grouped necessarily in like South America or Africa or Europe, but these are just interesting on their own. So I'm just kind of tossing you. It's like we're going around the world in an hour with what you see here. But it's also known as a vegetable oyster, Moses in the cradle, or purple salsify. And it is hardy in zones 5A to 9B, which means it grows here. It'll grow here in and around Atlanta. So it's also a common biennial wildflower, which may be, if you recognize the scientific name or oyster plant, that's where you know it from, because it's also known as a wildflower. But that root of that wildflower does have its food uses. So it's a root vegetable, and it can have white or black skin, and it looks a little bit like a parsnip, so a real skinny parsnip, but it tastes a little bit like an oyster, if you like that kind of thing. So you can boil it or mash it, use it in soups or stews. It might be an interesting thing to add as a thickener agent into something that you would use, or want to season kind of like seafood, but maybe you're allergic to it. And so this might be a good option if you want that flavor, but can't eat seafood for whatever reason. So this will take 80 to 100 days to mature. So you would pick that in the fall. It does not store very, very good. So you would probably just leave it in the ground and just use that as needed or pull it up as needed. So oxalis, some of us might recognize that name, oxalis. We have the clover plant. I have some purple that grows here. We put it in a pot. You can get the green four-leaf clovers. It's known by different names. I'm probably going to butcher this. So oca or New Zealand yam. I'm just going to call it New Zealand yam because I won't butcher that. But this is native to South America and the Andean region, so the higher elevations in Venezuela to Argentina. So you can see anything that's much higher in elevation, that's probably where its origin is. Currently grown South America, Central America, and the highlands and Pacific Northwest, believe it or not. You can see I've got a little bit of red up there in the corner, and New Zealand. It is commercially produced. So these are the countries. You can grow it in other places, but these are actually the countries that are commercially producing this. It's grown in zones 3 through 9, and because it's grown in those higher areas or higher elevation areas, probably would not do so well here. It's just too hot and humid here. You could probably well, I don't know, but even the mountains here would be too humid. Pacific Northwest is pretty arid in the summertime, and all year round, it mimics some of the highlands in the mountainous regions in South America, just in temperature and with their elevation and everything. So you could try it here. It's worthwhile. It's just a very fibrous tuber that, you see it looks a little bit like a potato, just a lot smaller. And, it needs at least 12 hours of light a day to form those tubers. So it needs that long growing season. And, we can produce that, but we just don't have the cooler temperatures that it needs. So if you see these out and about in a grocery or have the opportunity to try it, I am not an oyster fan, so I will probably take a pass. But you can see it's used here in kind of a stew. And then you have a tortilla that you can dip and eat with that, or you can roast them as a root vegetable. I probably would try one just to say that I tried it. Who knows? I might like it. But yeah, so if you like the flavor of oysters and you can't eat those, here's an option. Celery root. So this is an origin of the Mediterranean basin. So again, another root vegetable. You can see there the origin in and around the Mediterranean. Currently grown in and around up into Northern Europe and up into Russia, South America, US, all of those. And currently grown, all even into the Caribbean and some of the tropical countries. So hardiness zones 3 through 6, probably higher elevations in the Caribbean area, some more, up in the mountains. But this particular version of celery root has edible roots. So not the type that you hack it off and then you use the top green part. This is actually going to be the starchy tuberous root. So this can be roasted and stewed, stir-fried, mashed, used in soups and stews and casseroles and things like that. So much like you would use for turnips or some of these other tuberous roots, it's just a substitute for a potato that maybe has a slightly different flavor to it. Quince. So we have quince, we have the ornamental version of quince here. It originated in Turkey, so these are not ornamentals. These are, edible versions, and currently grown in Southern Europe, Mediterranean, Asia, China, Greece, and Morocco. Also known as the Kydonian apple and hardiness zones 5 through 9. So technically, it will grow here if you wanted to try that. It's very astringent when it's green. So if you've ever tried to eat the little fruit that sometimes will grow on your ornamental quince, it would be like that. You would have to really allow it to kind of ripen and turn this really mellow yellow color. It would need to look more like a pear, I think. But if you want to source a variety that would grow and produce a fruit like what you see here, here in the dish you see is a poached variety. But the best varieties for growing for fruit are going to be the Smyrna, Champion, and pineapple varieties. So if you can source a quince in those particular varieties, it's worthwhile trying to see if you can get them to grow and produce some fruit if you want to try something different. So again, most times they're not going to be eaten raw, like you wouldn't just pick it up and start munching on it. You would use it to make jams, jellies, or alcoholic drink, like you see the drink that's up there in the corner. It's pretty drought tolerant once it's established. Again, you've got some of the Mediterranean areas where it's pretty arid. So, you can try it, and it does tolerate warmer temperatures. So it's worthwhile giving it a go. So if you do, report back to me and let me know how it turns out. Fava beans. Okay, so I know a lot of us have seen Silence of the Lambs, and there's that scene in there where he goes, he's talking about fava beans. So when this popped up, I laughed because that was immediately what I thought of. Anyway, fava beans are indigenous to the Mediterranean area, so you can see Italy and on into Turkey and some of the other Middle Eastern type countries, somewhat arid, and into Iran even. So currently grown all over North Africa, Spain, up into the UK, the Southeast Asia, China, into the US and South America, and also known as broad beans or faba beans or Vika faba. But I just think of them as fava beans and grown in zones 3 to 11. So they will grow in the Atlanta area. So here, because we're really hot and humid, this would probably be a winter crop because it's so hot and humid. So winter, maybe late summer, you would plant these and then harvest them hopefully before January. And you could play around with it. So if you buy some seeds, you could try it in both times just to see which would do better. Because you can obviously grow them all the way down into zones 11, which is tropical. So you can use these and eat them like lima beans. I would think of them that way. Steamed, stewed, mashed. You can put them in salads like edamame, stews, snacks, pesto, all sorts of things. So you're going to blanch them or cook them, flash cook them to get the tough skin off of them. It's going to be a nice tall annual vine, and they're going to have a whole bunch of pods on there, again, like a pea. So it's a nitrogen fixer, but worth trying and seeing if you can get it if you're into experimenting with different plants. And that's it. So I finished a little bit early, and that's okay. I ran late last time. So let's see. So Tim says, can you eat maypops? So they're not toxic, but they're going to be really hard, and I don't personally know anybody who eats them, but supposedly you can, for what that's worth. So you can try. Obviously, the longer they're on the vine, they're going to get harder and kind of woody and not as tasty. But you could try if you wanted to. Let's see. Bonnie Pennington says this is a very popular as an appetizer in Germany, stuffed with cheese and other veggies. Rather bitter. I don't know which particular plant you're talking about. Let's see. Oyster plants, easy to grow, take cold temps well. They can stay in the ground all winter and make a great stew. That's interesting to know. Gurney sells this to me. So do they taste like oysters? That I want to know. Does it have a oystery, fishy aroma? I do not like oysters, but I do like root vegetables. So if it doesn't really taste like oysters, I could probably do that. Jacama, California cousins pronounce it as an H. Great slice with dips. Yes. So you could slice it up much like a turnip, and you could, oh, endive, yeah. You could slice that up and put it on a, vegetable platter like carrots or something else, and then use a vegetable dip, like a dill dip or something like that. Uh, you could do that. So that sounds actually pretty tasty. And I have seen that sold around here. I don't think you would have to go to a international market to test that or to try to find that. I have seen it around. Um, so maybe the next time somebody decides to throw a party, you buy a few odd vegetables that you've never tried before and put them out there and put a little sign up and say, hey, we're going to try some new stuff and see what everybody thinks. Does anybody have any other questions? No? It could be about other stuff too. It doesn't have to be about um, anything here. If anybody wants to add a vegetable or a fruit that they've come across at some other point and would like more information, you can put that in there too. I'm more than happy to throw some additional stuff up there. I know occasionally we get folks from other parts of the world that move here. The whole reason that this particular presentation was done was because we have so many folks moving from all over the place. And so it was kind of interesting to see some of the things that have actually come into our office here I learned a little bit about them, and it allowed me that now if I have the opportunity to try some of these, I'll be more into trying them. Amber says, thanks. And as a child back in South Carolina, we grew Crowder peas regularly. Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of people that grow them around here. And again, you see them at the fair pretty regularly, mostly in just dried there. Talk about lemon cucumbers next time. I'm not getting very many lemon cucumbers, but yeah, go check out the Tequila garden. They're like growing up the fence and they're out of control there. Who knew they were so prolific? How about trying a few different fruits and vegetables during the Master Gardener meeting? I like that idea. Yeah, why don't, somebody can bring that up and pull some of the stuff off here that you can source locally. And yeah, that would be a good idea. You can, have some new things to try, new dishes to try. And that would be, you could just call it International Night. That would actually be a really cool thing to do. I think that would be awesome. And then, maybe invite the public as well, because you might get some new people to show up and want to join. But I would be that would be a good opportunity. That way you don't have to waste a lot of money on something you may not like, but you can definitely try it and you might like it. You never know. And share seeds. Yes, definitely share seeds. Because some of these you would have to order from overseas, I suspect, which is a lot easier now than it used to be. You can get stuff from Etsy, you can get stuff from Amazon, you get stuff off eBay. But it's way better if you can source it locally, because at least you know that it's true to whatever it's supposed to be if a master gardener is sharing it, or somebody that is familiar with that particular vegetable or fruit. All right. So if nobody has any more questions about things or anything else, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for the evening. I'm going to stop sharing. And that's a wrap. So thank you everybody for coming. I actually had more people than I thought I was going to, doing this so last minute. But the next go round when we do this again, it's going to be on bioluminescence. And so that one, again, my wonderful mom did a lot of research, and we're going to nerd out a little bit on that. We're going to learn why things glow or why they phosphorus under black lights. And we're going to learn about some different plants and animals, bacteria, fungi, and even some mammals that might fluoresce. We have had one on pitcher plants. On what? Yeah, we could do one. Well, we could do a pitcher. We could do a carnivorous plant. That there we go. There's another one to do. Carnivorous plant. Carnivorous plants. I do have a little bog garden out there. Um, I love them and they're expensive, but they are definitely interesting and worthwhile. So maybe that's another presentation for the future. Bog gardens. All right. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you all have a great evening. We'll talk to you later.